Sarah sat on her bed, a stack of records piled beside her. Not just any records, but Elvis Presley records. Her fingers traced the grooves on the worn pango, feeling the faint ridges that held the music she couldn't hear. She knew all the album covers by heart. Elvis in his gold lame suit, Elvis with his guitar, Elvis with that famous smirk that made girls swoon. Sarah at 16 was no different. Well, maybe a little different. Sarah was deaf. She'd been born that way into a world that often felt silent and apart. But even without hearing, Sarah loved music. She loved the idea of it, the stories people told about it, the way it made their bodies sway and their faces light up. Her older sister Emily would often describe songs to her, trying to put words to the melodies and rhythms that flowed through the air. Emily would put her hand on the speaker of their old record player, telling Sarah to feel the vibrations. Sarah would press her palm against the wood, feeling a faint buzz, a distant thrum. It was something, but it wasn't the roaring, soul-stirring sound everyone else described. "Imagine a drum," Emily would say. "It's a big, low thud, boom, boom, TSS. And then the guitar, it's higher, a quick buzz." Sarah would nod, trying to translate the words into something she could feel. She imagined sounds as shapes, as colors, as textures. A bass drum was a deep, dark circle. A guitar solo was a jagged streak of lightning. Elvis was different, though, even through Emily's descriptions, he seemed to leap out. His voice, Emily had tried to explain, it's like velvet and fire all at once. And when he moves, oh, Sarah, he's just electricity. Sarah had seen videos of Elvis, watched him swivel his hips, strum his guitar, tilt his head with that famous grin. She saw the way the crowd screamed, the way they seemed to hang on his every move. She saw the energy, even as she couldn't hear the sound. One day, Emily burst into Sarah's room, practically bouncing off the walls. "Sarah, you won't believe it. Mom got tickets. Elvis, he's playing in Memphis next month." Sarah's eyes widened. Memphis? The King's home. A live concert. Her heart started to thrum a different kind of vibration than the one from the record player, a hopeful, nervous thrum. She'd never been to a live concert before. What would it be like? Would it be just like the record player? A faint buzz she could barely distinguish. Or would it be more? Are you sure? Sarah signed, her fingers moving quickly. Will I feel anything? Sarah, this isn't just any concert, this is Elvis. People say the whole stadium shakes when he sings. We'll be close to the stage too. I bet you'll feel every single beat. The thought both thrilled and terrified. Sarah, what if it was too much? Too many vibrations? Too much chaos? What if she felt nothing at all? And the magic Emily described remained forever out of her reach. But the image of Elvis, the way he moved, the way people reacted to him, was too strong to resist. She nodded slowly, a smile finally spreading across her face. "Yes," she signed, "I want to go." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of anticipation. Emily described every detail she could find about Elvis's concerts, the flashing lights, the roar of the crowd, the specific songs he usually played. She taught Sarah the sequence of his most famous songs, miming the actions Elvis would perform for each one. For Hound Dog, Emily would pretend to strum a guitar and do a quick hip swivel. For Can't Help Falling in Love, she'd place her hand over her heart, a soft, loving expression on her face. Sarah practiced in front of her mirror, trying to mimic the movements, trying to imagine the sounds that accompanied them. She researched the stadium, looking at pictures of the stage, the seating arrangements. She wanted to be prepared, to understand every little detail before she even got there. This wasn't just a concert. It was an exploration, a journey into a world she often felt excluded from. Her mom, always supportive, had even found special tickets that put them closer to the stage, right next to the speakers. "For the full experience, honey," her mom had said, her eyes warm. Sarah wasn't sure what full experience meant for her, but she hoped it was more than just a buzz. She hoped It was something that would finally make her understand why everyone loved music so much, why it seemed to move them in ways she could only dream of. The day of the concert finally arrived. Sarah woke up with a nervous flutter in her stomach. She dressed carefully, choosing her favorite denim jeans and a simple white top. Emily, meanwhile, was already bouncing around the house, humming Elvis songs, a habit she had picked up to help Sarah connect, even if it was just to visual cues of her humming. "Ready, rock and roll queen," Emily signed, holding up a bright red scarf, an homage to Elvis's iconic style. Sarah laughed. Taking the scarf and tying it around her neck, she looked at herself in the mirror one last time. A deaf girl going to an Elvis concert. It seemed like a dream, a wild, impossible dream. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever the night would bring. She was ready to feel. The drive to Memphis felt endless, but also strangely short. Sarah watched the landscape blur past the car window, her mind buzzing with a quiet hum of excitement and a little bit of fear. She gripped Emily's hand, a silent conversation passing between them. Emily squeezed back a gesture of reassurance. When they finally arrived at the Mid-South Coliseum, Sarah gasped. The place was enormous, a towering structure of brick and concrete lit up by the setting sun. Even from outside, she could feel a tremor in the ground, a low thrum that seemed to vibrate up through her shoes. It was faint, but it was there, a promise of something more. The crowd was already gathering, a sea of people stretching in every direction. They flowed like a river towards the entrance, a vibrant mix of ages, all united by their anticipation. Sarah had never seen so many people in one place. The air vibrated with their collective energy, a silent roar that she felt in her bones. People were laughing, talking loudly, their mouths moving in a flurry of shapes and expressions. Some hummed or sang snippets of Elvis, songs, strange mix of awe and feeling. Small Emily, ever the guide, gently nudged her forward. "Come on, Sarah, let's get inside." Entering the Coliseum was like stepping into another world. The sheer scale of the space was overwhelming. The ceiling stretched far above, a cavernous dome. Lights flashed, reflecting off the polished floors and metal railings. The air grew thicker with the scent of popcorn and sweat and something else. Something electric and alive. Sarah could feel the vibration of people walking, thousands of footsteps, creating a continuous rumble. It was deeper than the feeling she got from the record player, a more encompassing thrum. Her entire body seemed to pick up on it, a low hum in her chest. They found their seats much closer than Sarah had imagined. They were just a few rows back from the stage, close enough to see the individual sequins on the band's outfits, close enough to feel the slight rush of air from the giant speakers flanking the stage. These speakers were massive, taller than a man, and Sarah knew logically that they were the source of the thunderous sound. But what would they feel like? The stage was a dazzling spectacle of lights and instruments. Drums gleamed under the spotlights. Guitars waited silently on stands, and microphones stood poised, ready for the voice that would fill the arena. The lights began to dim, plunging the vast space into a twilight hush. Collective gasp rippled through the crowd, a silent wave of anticipation that Sarah felt like a shiver running down her spine. Then, a sudden burst of light from the stage, followed by a deeper, more insistent vibration. It wasn't a steady hum anymore. It was a rhythmic pulse, a boom, 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 that went right through the floor and up through Sarah's feet. It was the bass drum, she realized. Even before Emily excitedly pointed it out, Emily pressed her hand onto Sarah's arm, her eyes wide. "It's starting. They're tuning up." The vibrations changed, morphing from a steady pulse to a series of quick, sharp thrums, higher pitched, like a frantic buzzing guitars, she thought. She could almost picture the guitar's fingers flying across the strings. The anticipation in the crowd was palpable. Sarah felt it like a pressure building in the air, a silent scream rising from thousands of throats. She gripped the armrests of her seat, her knuckles white. This was it, the moment she had both longed for and dreaded. What if she was wrong? What if her body couldn't translate these massive vibrations into anything meaningful? What if she just felt a jumbled mess, a chaotic rumble that made no sense? The thought was a cold knot in her stomach. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm her racing heart. "Look," Emily nudged her, pointing frantically at the stage. "He's coming." Sarah opened her eyes. The lights dimmed once more. Then a single spotlight cut through the darkness, landing on a figure emerging from the side of the stage. A collective roar erupted from the crowd, a physical force that hit Sarah like a gust of wind. The ground beneath her feet vibrated violently. The air itself seemed to crackle. It wasn't just the speakers now. It was the entire stadium, the entire building, trembling. And then he was there, Elvis, dressed in a dazzling jumpsuit, his silhouette iconic even from a distance. The roar of the crowd intensified, becoming a sustained rumble like a distant thunderstorm. Sarah felt it in her chest, a deep resonant thrum that seemed to align with the frantic beat of her own heart. She looked at Emily, whose face was alight with pure joy, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sarah smiled, a shaky, uncertain smile. She was here, she was feeling something. But what? What would it become? The roar of the crowd was a physical entity, a massive wave that crashed over Sarah. It wasn't just a vibration. It was a pressure, a dense, humming force that pressed against her skin, vibrated through her bones, and made her teeth tingle. Elvis was on stage, bathed in a dazzling spotlight. He raised a hand, and the roar incredibly grew even louder, as if the thousands of people in the arena were trying to physically lift the roof off the building. Sarah watched, mesmerized, as Elvis moved. He walked to the microphone, his movements fluid and confident. He held the microphone stand with one hand, his head tilted back slightly. Then the music started. It wasn't a soft start, it was an explosion. A massive, deep thump, thump, thump hit Sarah's chest like a physical blow. It was the bass drum, she realized, magnified 1,000 times. Pulsed through the floor, up her legs, through her entire torso. It was a heartbeat, a giant, powerful heartbeat that wasn't her own. Immediately, other vibrations joined in. A constant, low rumble, the bass guitar wrapping around the drum beat, like a warm, powerful arm. Then, higher, sharper tremors. The electric guitars, a frantic, buzzing energy that danced over the deeper thrums. Sarah felt it all at once, a chaotic symphony of vibrations that overwhelmed her senses. Her head spun a little, trying to make sense of the jumble. Emily leaned close, shouting silently into Sarah's ear, her mouth forming the words, "He's singing, C.C. Ryder." Emily gestured to Elvis, who was now swaying his voice, though unheard by Sarah, clearly filling the stadium. Sarah focused on Elvis as he moved. The vibration seemed to change. When he moved his hips, a deep rolling tremor rippled to the floor. When he gestured with his hand, the air seemed to shimmer with a lighter, quicker pulse. She watched his lips move, saw the effort in his jaw, and imagined the sound of his voice. The bass drum was the easiest to feel, a relentless, powerful pulse. Boom, boom. It was the anchor of the music, the foundation upon which everything else was built. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the vibrations wash over her. She tried to separate them, to identify the different instruments by their unique feel. The bass guitar was a continuous hum, a deep purr that resonated in her stomach. The electric guitars were a sharper, more frantic buzz, a vibration that tickled her fingertips and made her scalp tingle. But what about the vocals? Emily had described Elvis's voice as velvet and fire. How could she feel? She watched Elvis's chest, trying to imagine the power coming from within him. As he belted out a line, a new sensation emerged. A pervasive, all-encompassing vibration that seemed to fill the air around her. A rich, complex hum that was different from the instruments. It wasn't just a cymbal buzz. It was layered, like many different vibrations happening at once, blending and twisting. It was distinct, somehow steeped into pure physical resonance. It wasn't a clean, clear feeling, not like she imagined hearing was. It was messy, overwhelming. But it was there. She was feeling the music, truly feeling it for the first time. It was like her body had suddenly become an enormous antenna, picking up every single tremor in the air and translating it into a physical sensation. Emily, seeing Sarah's concentrated expression, squeezed her hand. She pointed at Elvis, then made a sign for singing, then a sign for powerful. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the king. He moved into another song, a faster one. The drums became a rapid fire, assault, thump, 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 a quick, insistent rhythm that made her entire body want to move. The guitars buzzed furiously, a higher-pitched tremor that felt like a swarm of bees in her chest. The voice vibration became more intense, a vibrant hum that seemed to lift her. She felt a lightness, a joyous energy that she hadn't anticipated. People around them were standing, dancing, clapping along. Sarah felt the vibrations of their movements through the floor, their collective energy adding to the overall hum of the stadium. It was like everyone was a part of the music, contributing to its massive physical presence. Her initial fear had begun to melt away, replaced by a profound sense of wonder. This wasn't just a faint buzz. This was a living, breathing, vibrating force. It was overwhelming, yes, but also exhilarating. She was feeling the rhythm, the pulse, the raw energy of a live performance. She could feel the shifts in the music, the way it sped up or slowed down, the way the different feels of the instruments wove together. A smile, wide and unself-conscious, spread across Sarah's face. Her eyes, which had been narrowed in concentration, now sparkled with a newfound light. She didn't understand everything. Not yet, but she was starting to connect with the music, not through her ears, but through her very being. And it was just the beginning. As Elvis moved from one song to the next, Sarah found herself adjusting her body, slowly learning to interpret the new language of vibrations. The initial chaotic jumble began to resolve into something more structured, more meaningful. It was like her skin had suddenly become a giant ear, finely tuned to the subtle shifts in pressure and frequency. When a song with a heavy driving beat began, Sarah felt a strong, consistent thud, thud, thud in her chest, almost like a separate heart beating inside her. This, she knew, was the kick drum, the foundation of a rock and roll song. It was a solid, undeniable presence that anchored the whole experience. Beneath it, a deeper rolling rumble, continuous and enveloping, was the bass guitar. It filled the space, a warm blanket of low frequency that resonated in her stomach and vibrated up through her diaphragm. Then came the sharper, quicker tremors. These were the guitar. When Elvis's lead guitarist stepped forward for a solo, the vibrations coming from the stage became a rapid-fire succession of high-pitched trembles, like tiny, frantic insects buzzing under her skin, darting and weaving. She could almost feel the speed of the notes, the intensity of the strumming. It was a flurry of energy, electric and alive. When the rhythm guitar joined in, it was a more sustained, rhythmic buzz, complementing the lead. A steady pulse of energy. The voice vibration was still the most astounding. It was not like the distinct percussive thump of the drums or the buzzing of the guitars. Elvis's voice was a rich, complex hum that resonated everywhere. It seemed to occupy the air, not just the floor. When he held a note, the vibration would sustain a continuous, powerful current that felt like warmth spreading through her chest, making her collarbones tingle. When his voice rose, the frequency of the vibration seemed to increase, becoming a more intense, tighter. When he dropped to a lower note, it deepened, becoming a widespread, almost guttural thrum that settled in her gut. She started to recognize the different feels for different types of songs. For a fast-paced rock anthem, the vibrations were sharp, quick, and driving a relentless assault of energy. Her fingers would twitch. Her feet tapped the floor even though she couldn't hear the rhythm. For a slower, more melodic song, the vibrations became smoother, deeper, more sustained. The bass would be more prominent, a continuous, comforting thrum, and the voice vibration would be a gentle, pervasive hum, like a deep, soft purr. Emily, seeing Sarah's intense concentration, leaned over. "That's jailhouse rock," she mouthed, her hands moving quickly to mime the iconic dance moves. Sarah smiled, a genuine, delighted smile. She felt the driving beat, the frantic guitars, the powerful vocal hum. She felt the raw energy and excitement emanating from Elvis and from the crowd, and it perfectly matched the feel of the song. She could feel the distinct segments of the song, the driving verses, the slightly different, more open feel of the chorus. Her hands, without conscious thought, began to move. She didn't mimic Elvis's precise movements, but her body swayed, her head bobbed, her fingers tapped against her knees. She was dancing, feeling the music in a way she never had before. It wasn't about hearing, it was about experiencing. Her entire body was a resonating chamber translating sound waves into physical sensation. She closed her eyes again, letting her other senses dim, focusing solely on the intricate tapestry of vibrations. She could distinguish between the punch of the snare drum, a sharp, quick jolt, and the crash of the cymbals, a wide, shimmering tremor that quickly faded. Piano, when it joined in for a brief solo, was a lighter, more delicate vibration. Like many tiny raindrops tapping quickly, it was astounding. It wasn't just noise, it was music. It had structure, rhythm, melody, all translated into a unique language of touch. She could feel the crescendo of a song, building the vibrations, intensifying, becoming more crowded and powerful until they reached a peak and then subsided. She could feel the subtle pauses, the moments of silence as a sudden absence of vibration, a sudden emptiness that made the return of the music even more powerful. She realized something profound. Her deafness wasn't a barrier here. It was a different path, a unique way of experiencing something truly universal. She wasn't just feeling vibrations, she was feeling the essence of the music. The raw power, the emotion, the sheer joy that Elvis radiated, and in that moment she felt connected, not just to Emily beside her, but to every single person in that stadium, and to Elvis himself. They were all experiencing the same energy, just through different senses. The world wasn't silent for her now. It was vibrating with life. The concert continued, and Sarah found herself less focused on dissecting the individual vibrations, and more on the overall flow, the collective energy. The sheer force of the crowd was a revelation. It wasn't just the speakers making the stadium shake. It was the people. When Elvis launched into a particularly energetic song like Blue Suede Shoes, the stadium erupted. The vibrations from the stage pulsed with increased intensity. The drums became a relentless assault, the guitars a frenetic buzz, and Elvis's voice a powerful, all-encompassing hum that seemed to lift Sarah from her seat. But layered on top of all this was the incredible force of thousands of people moving. Sarah felt it through the floor. A constant, rhythmic stomp, a surge and sway that permeated the very concrete. When the crowd clapped in unison, a sharp, widespread tremor would ripple through the air, like tiny electric shocks on her skin, followed by a slight change in air pressure. When they screamed, a high-pitched, almost painful buzz would assault her ears, a pressure that pushed against her eardrums, even though she couldn't hear the sound. It was the collective exhalation of pure excitement translated into a physical sensation. She watched Emily, who was swaying and mouthing the lyrics, her eyes shining with joy. Emily bounced on the balls of her feet, her body responding effortlessly to the music. Sarah put a hand on Emily's arm, feeling the subtle vibrations of Emily's movement, the way her muscles tensed and relaxed with the rhythm. It was another layer of connection, another way to feel the pulse of the concert. During one particularly rousing number, Elvis stepped to the edge of the stage, his hips swiveling, his arms outstretched. The crowd surged forward. A collective gasp and roar that hit Sarah like a tidal wave. She felt the ground literally tremble under the weight of so many people jumping and screaming. It was overwhelming, a cacophony of physical sensations, but it was also exhilarating. It was impossible not to be swept up in it. She started to feel the emotions of the crowd. When Elvis sang a powerful, defiant song, she felt a surge of strength, a feeling of raw energy radiating from the people around her. When he sang a more tender ballad, the vibrations softened, became smoother and deeper, and she felt a wave of quiet reverence settle over the stadium. collective hum of the crowd became less frantic, more subdued. A gentle swaying rather than an energetic bounce. One specific moment stood out. Elvis began to sing, "Can't Help Falling in Love." The lights dimmed, bathing the stage in a soft, warm glow. The music shifted dramatically. The drums became a gentle, distant thrum, a soft pulse rather than a driving beat. The bass guitar became a continuous, flowing river of deep vibration, almost like a lullaby. The electric guitars were barely there, just a faint, shimmering presence, but Elvis's voice vibration intensified. It became the dominant force, a rich, resonant hum that filled the air and resonated deep within Sarah's chest. It was a warm, pervasive feeling, like a gentle embrace. She felt it everywhere, clinging to her skin, vibrating in her hair, settling in her stomach. It was a beautiful, tender feeling, unlike anything she had felt before. She watched Elvis, who moved with a slow, deliberate grace. He reached out to the crowd, his face etched with emotion. People around Sarah were swaying, some wiping tears from their eyes. She felt the collective emotion of the song, a deep well of affection and tenderness. It wasn't just the music, but the shared experience, the connection between Elvis and his fans, translated into a palpable wave of feeling. Sarah felt tears prick her own eyes, not because she was sad, but because she felt so incredibly connected. It was as if the music, through its vibrations, was speaking directly to her heart, bypassing the need for hearing altogether. She felt the love that poured from Elvis, the adoration that flowed back from the crowd, and she was a part of it. She was immersed in a symphony of touch, a world of feeling she never knew existed. This wasn't just a concert, it was a communion. It was proof that music wasn't just about sound. It was about emotion, about connection, about raw human energy. And she, a deaf girl, was feeling every single astounding bit of it. As the concert rode on, Sarah's focus sharpened, not just on the music's vibrations, but on Elvis himself. She had seen countless videos, watched his famous hip swivels, his confident strides, his matic gestures. But seeing it live, combined with the overwhelming physical sensation of the music, was an entirely different experience. When Elvis launched into an upbeat rock song, the drums became a relentless assault, a rapid-fire series of thumps and snaps that made her whole body want to bounce. The guitars buzzed furiously, a higher-pitched tremor that felt like excitement bubbling up from her stomach, and Elvis, he moved with an almost unbelievable energy. When he would throw his head back, strumming his guitar with force, Sarah felt a surge in the overall vibration, a sudden intensity that matched his powerful motion. When he swung the microphone stand, a subtle shift in the air pressure would accompany the movement, a quick, almost silent whoosh that she could feel on her skin. His famous hip swivels, which on video seemed simply iconic, were a revelation here. As he swiveled, a deep rolling tremor would ripple through the floor. A sustained rhythmic wave that was different from the consistent beat of the drums. It was fluid, sensual, and undeniably powerful. It was as if his movements themselves generated their own unique vibration, adding to the layers of feeling. Crowd's reaction to these movements was immediate and intense, a collective roar, a rush of air as people jumped, adding to the overall hum of excitement. Sarah felt their collective gasp, their collective cheer. As a sudden rise in pressure, a burst of energy that permeated the air around her. When he stepped back, leaned into the crowd, and offered a playful wink, Sarah didn't just see the action. She felt the immediate response of the thousands of fans around her. A sudden sharp shiver would run through the crowd, translating to a quick, widespread flutter in the air, almost like a collective sigh. It was the feeling of adoration, of delight, radiating outwards from every single person in the stadium. During a particularly intense guitar solo, Elvis would crouch his body taut, his fingers flying across the fretboard. Sarah felt the quick, intricate buzz of the guitar, amplified by the sheer force of his focus and passion. It wasn't just the sound. It was the raw emotion, the energy he poured into his performance that created these astounding vibrations. She felt the throw of the solo, the building intensity as the vibrations grew more frantic and complex. She also began to notice the more subtle aspects of his stage presence. When he would pause just for a moment to take a breath or interact with the band, the overall level of vibration would slightly dip a brief moment of relative calm before the next explosive burst of music. These tiny lulls made the subsequent surge sound even more apple, creating a dynamic rhythm of felt intensity. Emily, sensing Sarah's deeper connection, would lean over and mouth comments or sign enthusiastically. "His charisma, it's incredible." Emily signed her hands, moving to convey the magnetism. Elvis exuded. Sarah nodded because she felt it. She felt his power, his connection with the audience, his sheer star quality. Through the way, the vibrations intensified, changed, or ebbed, and flowed with his every move. It wasn't just about the loud parts. Even when he spoke to the audience between songs, the vibrations were different. They weren't musical, but a lower, more consistent rumble, like a deeper hum that emanated from his chest. And the crowd's response to his words, their laughter, their cheers were distinct from their reaction to the music. Laughter was a quicker, more erratic vibration. A rapid series of jolts, cheers were a sustained upward surge of pressure. Sarah realized that Elvis wasn't just a singer, he was a master of energy. He controlled the atmosphere of the entire stadium, manipulating the vibrations through his movements, his voice, and his connection with the crowd. He was generating a feeling, a pervasive sense of excitement and joy that permeated every single person in the arena, regardless of whether they could hear or not. Her own body started to move almost unconsciously, not just swaying but embodying the feel of the music. When the drums pounded, her shoulders would subtly move to the beat. When the guitar screamed, her fingers would twitch. It was as if her body, finally, was understanding the language of music, not just as sound, but as pure, unadulterated energy. This was more than just feeling. This was experiencing, truly experiencing, an Elvis Presley concert. As the concert reached its peak, a profound moment unfolded that would forever etch itself into Sarah's memory. Elvis introduced a song that Emily had described as one of his most powerful ballads, a song that moved audiences to tears. Sarah braced herself, eager to feel the emotional depth Emily had spoken of. The stadium lights softened, casting a warm, intimate glow over the stage. The roaring crowd surprisingly quieted, their energy shifting from a frantic buzz to a reverent hum. The music began. Slowly, deliberately, the bass drum became a gentle, deep thump, 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 a rhythmic heartbeat, slower and more spacious than before. The bass guitar was a continuous, resonant hum, a profound rumble that vibrated through the floor and wrapped around Sarah's entire lower body, settling deep in her gut. It felt like a warm, comforting presence, a steady foundation. Then Elvis began to sing. His voice vibration was unlike anything she had felt all night. It was not just a powerful hum, but a rich, layered texture that resonated with incredible depth and warmth. It felt like a wave rising and falling, with each note spreading through the air and settling in her chest right over her heart. It was a pervasive, almost tangible feeling, as if his voice was a physical entity, filling the entire space around her. She closed her eyes, letting the vibration wash over her. It was heavy, but not oppressive, comforting in its profound depth. She could feel the subtle shifts in his vocal delivery, a slight tremor when his voice seemed to waver with emotion, a surge of intensity when he belted out a powerful line, a gentle fade as he held a note and then let it dissipate into the air. This was more than just feeling a vibration. It was feeling the emotion behind the sound. Emily had often described music as telling a story, conveying feelings beyond words. Now Sarah understood. This vibration wasn't just a frequency. It was sorrow, yearning, love, all rolled into one deep, soul-stirring hum. A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek, then another. She wasn't sad, not exactly. It was a feeling of overwhelming beauty, of profound connection. It was the release of years of wondering, of imagining, of longing to understand. In that moment, she wasn't just feeling the song. She was feeling the story of the song told through the language of her skin and bones. Emily, seeing Sarah's tears, reached out and gently squeezed her hand. Sarah opened her eyes, meeting Emily's gaze. Emily's own eyes were glistening, a silent testament to the song's power. Sarah knew without words that Emily understood. They were sharing this moment, even though their experiences were fundamentally different. The vibration of Elvis's voice seemed to grow in intensity, reaching a crescendo that built and built, encompassing everything. It was a wave of pure emotion, a swelling of feeling that seemed to lift Sarah out of her seat. She felt a lightness, an expansiveness in her chest, as if her heart was swelling to contain the vastness of the feeling. When the song finally ended, the sudden silence was almost as powerful as the music itself. The complete absence of vibration after such an intense presence left a lingering resonance in the air, a ghost of the feeling. The crowd, which had been silent and mesmerized, erupted into a roar of applause. But it was a different kind of roar this time, tinged with awe and profound appreciation. Sarah felt a shudder run through her body, a lingering aftershock of the emotional intensity. She looked at her hands, still trembling slightly. She had felt the drums, the bass, the guitars. She had felt the crowd. But above all, she had felt Elvis's voice, not as a sound, but as an overwhelming, beautiful, and utterly undeniable presence. It was the moment of complete understanding, the moment when the abstract idea of music became a concrete, physical, and deeply emotional reality for her. She had come to the concert hoping to feel something, and she had felt everything. It was beyond astounding. It was a miracle. After the profound experience of the ballad, the concert surged back into high-energy rock and roll, but for Sarah, something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer just trying to decipher the vibrations. She was fully immersed, flowing with the current of the music, understanding its language on a deeper, intuitive level. When Elvis launched into a fast, boogie-woogie number, the vibrations were a frantic, joyous explosion. The drums hammered a rapid-fire assault of thumps and snaps that made her heart race. The bass was a continuous bouncing thrum, almost like a giant rubber band stretching and recoiling. The guitars were a shimmering, buzzing frenzy, like hundreds of tiny electric currents dancing across her skin. And Elvis's voice, ever present, was a powerful driving hum, pulsing with energy and exuberance. Sarah found herself moving without conscious thought. Her head bobbed, her shoulders swayed, her feet tapped an invisible beat. Her hands, which had been gripping the armrests, now moved freely, feeling the air, feeling the subtle shifts in pressure. She wasn't dancing the way Emily danced or the way the crowd danced. She was dancing her way, translating the vibrations into a fluid personal expression of joy. Emily watched her, a look of pure wonder on her face. She didn't try to explain or interpret anymore. She simply watched, her smile wide. Sarah caught Emily's eye, and they exchanged a silent moment of understanding. Emily knew Sarah was truly getting it. Each song brought a new texture, a new emotional landscape. A bluesy number brought slower, heavier vibrations, a deep, mournful hum that settled low in her chest. A gospel-infused song brought a powerful, uplifting surge, a feeling of expansiveness and joy that made her feel light. She could feel the changes in rhythm, the subtle shifts in melody, the interplay of instruments, all through the varying qualities of the vibrations. The entire stadium felt like one giant living organism, pulsating with the music. Sarah could feel the crowd's energy ebb and flow with Elvis's performance. When he hit a particularly high note or executed a signature move, the sudden burst of screams and cheers was a sharp, electrifying pressure against her skin, followed by a slight, ringing sensation in her eardrums. It was a physical manifestation of collective excitement, a wave she could ride. She even started to feel the presence of individual instruments more distinctly within the overall sonic tapestry. Crisp, sudden snap of the snare drum, the sustained, shimmering swish of a cymbal crash, the resonant thump of the bass drum, the sharp, quick attack of a lead guitar note, followed by its lingering vibrato, deeper, smoother feel of the rhythm guitar providing a backdrop. And the piano, a lighter, more delicate vibration like many tiny taps on a surface. It was a constant, fluid dance of pressure and release of intensity, and softness of distinct pulses and continuous hums. Her body, once an isolated vessel, now felt intimately connected to everything around her. She wasn't just in the audience. She was part of the performance, a vital component of the energy exchange between Elvis and his fans. Time seemed to warp. Hours felt like minutes. Each song was a journey, an exploration of new sensations and emotions. Sarah was no longer conscious of the physical discomfort of the vibrations, the mild headache, the slight ringing in her ears. They were just part of the overall experience, a testament to the raw power of the music. Her initial anxieties about feeling nothing or feeling only chaos had completely vanished. Instead, she felt a profound sense of gratitude and liberation. Her deafness, which had often felt like a wall between her and the world, had transformed into a unique pathway to understanding, a different, equally valid way of experiencing something truly universal. As the concert neared its end, Elvis slowed the pace, bringing the energy down with a series of softer, more introspective songs. The vibrations softened, becoming less frantic, more deeply resonant. Sarah felt a profound sense of peace settle over her, a quiet contentment. She had done it. She had felt an Elvis Presley concert, and it was more than she could have ever dreamed. The final songs of the concert were a medley of Elvis's classics, each one evoking a different spectrum of feeling. As he sang, the vibrations softened, became more nuanced, a gentle ebb and flow that resonated deep within Sarah. She felt a profound sense of connection, not just to the music, but to the thousands of people sharing this moment, and to Elvis himself, whose presence filled the stadium with an almost spiritual energy. When the last notes of the final song faded, the silence that followed was immense. It wasn't an empty silence. It was a pregnant pause, filled with the lingering echoes of intense vibrations, like the afterglow of a powerful sunset. Sarah's body still hummed, her chest still thrummed with residual energy, a phantom rhythm that persisted long after the music had ceased. Then the crowd erupted, not with the frantic roar of earlier, but with the sustained thunderous applause, mixed with cheers and whoops of pure adoration. Sarah felt it as a profound tremor, a widespread vibration that rippled through the floor, through the air, and even through Emily, who was clapping vigorously beside her. It was a collective outpouring of gratitude, and Sarah felt it as keenly as anyone. Elvis took a final bow, bathed in a single spotlight. He blew kisses to the crowd, his smile radiant. Then, with a final wave, he walked off stage, disappearing into the wings. The stage lights came up bright and almost jarring after the dim concert glow. People slowly began to stir, to move, to file out of the stadium. The collective hum of the crowd was still present, but it was changing, becoming less focused, more diffuse, as the energy dissipated. Sarah remained seated for a moment, her eyes closed, trying to hold on to the profound sensation she had experienced. Her fingers still tingled, her chest felt warm and expansive. Emily gently touched her arm. "Sarah, ready to go?" She signed, her voice soft, her face still alight with awe. Sarah opened her eyes, a slow smile spreading across her face. She looked at Emily, her eyes shining. It was astounding, she signed the word, feeling too small for the vastness of her experience. "I felt everything, truly everything." Emily's smile widened, her eyes welling up with tears. "I knew you would," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I just knew it." As they slowly made their way out of the stadium, Sarah noticed things she hadn't paid attention to on the way in. The lingering vibrations on the floor from the departing crowd, the cool night air on her skin, the bright lights overhead. Everything felt sharper, more alive, infused with the memory of the concert. Her senses felt heightened, attuned in a way they never had been before. She reflected on the journey, from the faint buzz of the record player to the overwhelming chaos of the initial vibrations, to the gradual understanding of rhythm, melody, and emotion through touch. She had felt the heartbeat of the drums, the soulful thrum of the bass, the electric dance of the guitars, and most profoundly the rich resonant embrace of Elvis's voice. She had felt the collective energy of thousands of fans, their excitement and adoration flowing through her. It wasn't just a physical experience, it was an emotional and spiritual one. It had transcended the limitations of her deafness and opened up a new dimension of understanding. Music, she now knew, wasn't just something heard. It was something felt deeply and universally. It was a language accessible to everyone. If only they knew how to listen with their whole body. The world outside the stadium felt different, too. The night air seemed to hum with a subtle vibrancy. The ground beneath her feet held a deeper resonance. Sarah felt a lightness in her step, a profound sense of joy and accomplishment. She had embarked on an adventure into the unknown, and she had returned transformed. The silence of her world was no longer a void. It was filled with the lingering echoes of an incredible vibrating symphony. Car ride home was quieter than the ride there, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was a comfortable, reflective one, filled with the hum of the tires on the road and the lingering vibrations of the concert in Sarah's body. Emily held her hand, occasionally squeezing it, a gesture that spoke volumes. Once home, Sarah didn't go straight to bed. She sat on her bed, her stack of Elvis records now seeming almost insignificant compared to the live experience. She picked up one of her fingers, tracing the grooves again, but this time she felt more than just ridges. She felt the memory of the deep bass thrum, the shock guitar buzz, the all-encompassing vocal hum. She closed her eyes, and for a moment she could almost conjure the feeling of the stadium shaking, the roar of the crowd, the palpable charisma of Elvis. "Are you still buzzing?" Emily signed, sitting down beside her. Sarah laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "Yes, my whole body feels like it's still vibrating. It's amazing, Emily. But my skin woke up." "It was like he was singing just for you," Emily said, her voice soft. "I watched you. You were so completely absorbed. It was incredible to see." Sarah leaned her head on Emily's shoulder. "Thank you, Emily, for taking me, for believing I could feel it." "Of course," Emily replied, hugging her. "You taught me something tonight, too. That music isn't just about what you hear. It's about what you feel inside. It's about connection." The concert had indeed changed Sarah. Before, music had been an abstract concept, a world she could observe but not truly enter. Now the door had been flung open. She understood the passion, the joy, the emotion that music evoked in others. Because she had felt it herself, in a way unique to her, her relationship with music continued to evolve. She started going to smaller local concerts with Emily, experimenting with different places to sit, different ways to position herself to maximize the vibrations. She discovered that standing closer to the speakers gave a more intense, raw feel, while sitting further back allowed her to feel the collective energy of the entire room. She learned to distinguish between genres, not just by Emily's descriptions, but by their unique vibrational signatures, the intricate rhythms of jazz, the driving pulse of rock, the flowing warmth of folk. She even found new ways to appreciate her old Elvis records. She would place her entire body against the large wooden speaker of their stereo lying on the floor, letting the music rain through her. The faint buzz was still faint, but now she had a reference point, a memory of the full thunderous feeling of a live concert that allowed her to imagine and amplify the sensations in her mind. The vibrations became a doorway to memory, a way to relive that astounding night. Sarah started drawing more too. Before the concert, her drawings were precise, detailed, focusing on visual clarity. After Elvis, her art became more abstract, more expressive. She drew with bolder strokes, using vibrant colors to represent the feelings she had experienced. Deep blues for the bass, fiery reds and yellows for the guitars, shimmering golds for Elvis's voice. Her art was no longer just about what she saw. It was about what she felt. The Elvis concert became a turning point in Sarah's life. It wasn't just about experiencing music. It was about understanding the vast possibilities of human perception. It taught her that limitations could be transformed into unique strengths, that there were always different ways to connect with the world, to find beauty and meaning. Years later, Sarah would tell the story that night, her eyes sparkling with the same wonder she felt back then. She would describe the physical sensations, the emotional breakthroughs, the profound connection she felt to Elvis and the thousands of fans around her. People would listen, captivated by her description of feeling the king, their own understanding of music, expanding with every word. Her story was indeed astounding. It was a testament to the power of music, the resilience of the human spirit, and the extraordinary ways we can connect with the world around us even without hearing a single note. For Sarah, the silence of her world had been filled not with sound but with an unforgettable symphony of touch, a heartwarming revelation that had set her heart to rock and roll forever.